For the past 18 years, if you were looking to buy a large 3-row SUV from GMC and you didn't necessarily need the added bulk and truckiness of a Yukon, you were looking at the Acadia. This vehicle was first launched back in 2007 alongside, of course, the Chevrolet Traverse, Buick Enclave, and at the time, the Saturn Outlook. The GMC certainly stood out for its more trucky design language and its huge size, just like the rest of its platform mates. Now, back in 2017, the second generation Acadia actually shrank in size to position it more as a Grand Cherokee rival, but for 2024, the all-new third generation Acadia reverses course here because GMC has fully redesigned this vehicle. It's substantially larger than the previous generation. It has an all-new platform, an all-new powertrain under the hood, a turbocharged four-cylinder, and a brand new interior with finally modern tech interfaces here, especially for the center touchscreen. So as you can see this week, GMC has loaned us the fully loaded Acadia Denali, and the big question I want answered for those of you who are looking for the ultimate 3-row family SUV with more of a luxury vibe, how does the brand new 2024 Acadia Denali stack up? Stay tuned to find out. So before we start talking about the all-new styling for this third generation Acadia, I thought I'd pop the hood and show you guys what's powering this thing. Now, previously, GMC offered a choice between either a Turbo 4 or a naturally aspirated V6. The company has decided to nix both of those options, replacing it with a new 2.5-liter turbocharged four-cylinder. Now, underneath the hood, you can see the Acadia continues to be a crossover SUV, which means it's got a transverse mounted engine. It's a front-wheel drive architecture with the availability of all-wheel drive. This powertrain first made its debut in the new 2024 Chevrolet Traverse. It's essentially a smaller version of the 2.7-liter Turbo 4 in the Canyon and in the Colorado. Now it displaces 2.5 liters, gasoline direct injection, double overhead cam. It makes 328 horsepower and 326 pound-feet of torque. That's an increase of 18 horsepower and 55 foot-pounds of torque over the old V6, a whopping 100 more horsepower versus the old 2-liter Turbo 4 in the previous generation. It all goes out through an 8-speed automatic transmission, so technically GMC reduced the gear count by 1, and you can take your pick between either front or all-wheel drive. The AT4 trim has a upgraded all-wheel drive system with a twin clutch unit. This vehicle, in terms of efficiency, technically it is rated actually a little bit less than the old Acadia at 19 in the city and 24 on the highway. That's on regular gas. It's about a 2 mpg reduction in the highway rating. That's because this vehicle is significantly larger. It has around a 22-gallon fuel tank. You're looking at around 400-ish miles of range on a full tank. Now, GMC doesn't quote a 0 to 60 time. We got 7.4 seconds in a Traverse, this car's platform made a couple months ago, so I suspect this car will do something pretty similar. It has a maximum towing capacity of 5,000 pounds, so it's about a 1,000-pound increase versus the previous generation, and that's again because of the upgrades that GMC has made to the chassis. And in terms of the curb weight, this vehicle is a lot larger, but surprisingly, it weighs in at just under 5,000 pounds. It's only around 200 to 300 pounds heavier than the previous generation of the Acadia. But let's go ahead and close up this hood here and talk about the exterior styling. Now, first of all, this particular color that I'm showing you is called Ebony Twilight. It's an extra $500. I don't particularly like black cars, especially for showing, on camera. They also show scratches pretty easily, but when the vehicle is clean, I will say that the Ebony Twilight has this beautiful metallic fleck in the actual paint. It goes wonderfully, of course, with the unique chrome style grille that you get with the Denali trim with the big GMC logo over there. Sadly, if you guys are looking for like a black finish on the grille on the Denalis, you can't get that, at least at the moment. GMC typically offers like a ultimate reserve package, which blacks out the chrome. Not so right now on the Acadia. You can see the headlights kind of remind you of a mixture of the Yukon and the Sierra with this really interesting C-shape LED daytime running light and turn signal. These are actually sequential LED turn signals as well. You have an LED low and high beam. You also have LED fog lights down there, along with more chrome trim, some active vents, your radar sensor here, of course, for the Super Cruise. A front camera system is also included on this trim. The Super Cruise is part of a $3,600 upcharge, which I highly recommend for those of you who plan to do road trips. And keep in mind, this is the fully loaded Denali. GMC also offers the base Elevation, which is anything but basic. It actually comes with a lot of equipment. And then the off-road oriented AT4, which I'm hoping I can get a hold of later on to do a separate review. Now, moving around the side profile, you can see there are definitely times where this vehicle could confuse you into thinking you bought a Yukon or you're driving a Yukon instead. It's significantly larger than the 2023 model at 204 inches long with a 121 inch long wheelbase. The overall length has grown by 10.5 inches and the wheelbase has grown by 8.5 inches. This vehicle is also just under 80 inches wide. It's around 4 inches wider than the previous generation. That's going to give it, again, more of a Yukon-like appearance with way more interior space. So it's great to see GMC has made this vehicle a large SUV again, as opposed to the smaller 2-row or 3-row as the previous generation. You can see my Denali trim has these optional 22-inch kind of multi-chrome look to the wheels. With the multiple spoke design. It's riding on a 275 by 45 R22 Continental all-season tire. You also have an adaptive suspension with performance dampers. That's included with the Denali trim. You have around 7.3 inches of ground clearance. The AT4 gives you about another ½ an inch of ground clearance. No adaptive air suspension, just adaptive dampers. I also love the full paint finish that you get along the wheel arch trim, along the side sills. You also have body colored mirrors here with integrated turn signals. You also have a rear or side camera system, Denali badging there, of course, more chrome along the side. And then, of course, with the sunroof, you get a big panoramic sunroof with the chrome roof rails. That pano sunroof is part of a Denali reserve package that my test car has. And you can see backing away from this vehicle, from the side profile, you can really see just how much more square and how much longer this car is. I really appreciate the overall look of this vehicle, especially from the rear. I think it actually looks better, even better from the rear. I actually like the way this car looks a lot, even more so than the Traverse. Looking at the rear, you can see those C-shaped full LED taillights also are, mimicked back here with the sequential turn signal. It says Denali back here in huge letters, as opposed to GMC, which they put the badge down there. In the other trims, the GMC badge would be here. So again, the company is really leveraging the, presence that Denali trim level has. It's a really good sub-brand within GMC. That's how you can tell it's all-wheel drive with the all-wheel drive badge there. And then you can see all Acadias come with these really nice-looking quad outlet exhausts. Love the fact that they're still doing an exposed exhaust system. They also look like they were basically pulled off of the current C8 Corvette, which is kind of cool. You have a rear wiper here, although it would have been nice to see it kind of hidden underneath the spoiler. That's the camera system there for the digital camera rearview mirror. But overall, I definitely think this is one of the more handsome looking vehicles in the segment. A power liftgate is also standard. Hands-free function is also included as well on this trim, which is nice. And you can see with that increase in size, the cargo capacity is also greatly improved. So with the third row seat up, which comes standard, you can see the third row seats 3 across. You have a maximum cargo of just under 23 cubic feet. That's almost twice the cargo capacity of the previous generation, which this is among the biggest cargo area in the segment. It's even more so than the Kia Telluride, Hyundai Palisade, and the Toyota Grand Highlander. You can see underneath the floor here, it also has a pretty deep storage area, and I love how that kind of sits upright. You can put groceries in here and keep them from sliding around. The Denali trim is the only trim that includes the power folding third row function. Now, you do have to hold the button here to keep the third row folding down. It's not folding down right now because the second row seats are a little bit too upright. But when you fold down the third row, it actually expands the cargo to around 57 cubic feet of space. That's around 13 more cubic feet than the previous generation. If you fold down everything, the max cargo is around 97.5 cubic feet, which is actually around 3.5 more cubic feet versus a Grand Highlander, which is typically among the best in the segment. So again, if you want the most cargo space, you're going to be looking at this. You're going to be looking at the Traverse and, of course, the Buick Enclave. So on the outside, GMC definitely knocked it out of the park in terms of the exterior design, but what about the interior? This is where GMC also pulled out a lot of their tricks here for giving this vehicle a much more modern interior. You can see, taking a look at the key fob, this is the current GMC or GM key fob in general. It's their intelligent access key. It's standard on all trims. You can see it has your usual buttons here for lock, unlock, remote start, power liftgate, and panic function. The key itself is a nice size. It feels good in your hands. And overall, I think most people should be pretty happy with the way the key fob looks. As you approach the vehicle, you can see the door handle is a traditional pull-out style. There's a chrome button here on the outside. It's on all 4 doors, which is nice. This vehicle also has a walk-away auto lock function, which if I have the key fob on me and shut the door walk away, it'll lock the doors, it'll also beep the horn. You can turn the beep function on or off. To access the vehicle, there's no sensor on the back of the door handle. You have to touch the button again. That's what will unlock the door and it'll unfold the mirrors for you. Now, my particular test car with the Ebony Twilight has a really great color combination on the inside. This is the sheer gray, very dark atmosphere, two-tone premium leather interior. This premium leather and this color combination is only available on the Denali trim. And it's definitely a nice, refreshing touch to see a light interior. The last Chevrolet Traverse that I tested had a black interior, and you can only get a black interior on the Traverse for 2024 on the top trims, although Chevy just introduced a High Country trim for 2025. You can see it has Denali embossed on the actual seat headrests. You can see with the two-tone look, the seats have a beautiful quilted leather with contrast stitching and piping. The leather also feels really high quality. The seats are heated and ventilated with a 14-way power adjustment on the two front seats. You also have a two-person memory here on the driver's side. In terms of the materials on the door panels, this is a soft touch injection molded plastic with kind of like a really nice brown look to it. You also have, it looks like a genuine wood grain trim with a matte finish. It looks and feels really nice. More of that quilted leather here, padded over here where you'd rest your elbows, of course. The window controls, they are not one touch for all four. You can see the driver is one touch up and down, only for the driver. The rest is a one touch down, but not a one touch up. I also noticed that when I was closing the driver window and I was utilizing the one touch, if I touched another window, it would actually stop the driver window from moving. Not sure why it does that. I found that to be an annoyance of a touch. You can see the 16-speaker Bose Performance Stereo Series audio is included on the Denali trim only. Other trims will have a 12-speaker version with less, wattage and power. You can see down here, it is a hard touch plastic area with some chrome accents, nice door storage. I like the contrast stitching here. But overall, the interior certainly makes a great first impression when you first open the door. Now, getting inside, with 7.3 inches of ground clearance, it has a nice, easy step-in height. As I go to shut the door, the door, I would say, doesn't have the most solid sounding thunk. There was a slight rattle as I shut the door, but you can see in terms of screen real estates, this is where the Acadia has seriously gotten a huge upgrade. You can see the start-stop button is right here where you'd expect it to be. And this vehicle is not a hybrid or a mild hybrid, so it has the typical GM starter noise. You can see the 11-inch display here for the instrument panel is standard on every trim. And then over here in the center, you have their latest Google-based Android automotive software, which is a 15-inch tablet in a portrait style. So this is standard on all versions of the Acadia, which is actually funny because this screen and dash layout is so different versus the Traverse. If you guys remember, the Traverse has a 17.7-inch display. The Buick version, the Enclave, has a 30-inch ultra-wide display. This is technically the smallest display, but I really like the way this looks. You can see, unlike electric versions of GM vehicles that have their newer Google-based softwares, this has wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is a really nice touch, along with the Google built-in. I will say, though, that the screen is kind of dim. I actually couldn't find the ability to adjust the brightness of the screen aside from just toggling the brightness here. It's at its max setting. And there are times where I wanted that screen to be even brighter. So I don't know if that's a software glitch or if that's something GMC will address later on. But I wanted the screen to be a little bit brighter, especially in bright sunlight. In terms of the rest of the interior, you can see the upper dash has a really nice soft touch injection molded area here with, it looks like real genuine stitching. It almost feels like a leatherette material covering that. There's a really interesting cool texture here for the speaker grille cover. Nice padded area here, echo throughout, from the upper portion to down here, more of that wood trim. There's also multicolor ambient lighting in this vehicle, which I think is a first for the Acadia. It has a pretty decent look at night. It's not super, high end like what you're gonna find from an actual luxury brand, but it's a nice touch that I think GMC has really improved upon. There are a couple of fit and finish issues that I've noticed. You can see right there, if I zoom in there, you can see the gap is kind of uneven there, and it looks a little bit cheap if you stare at that a little bit closer. You can also see there's a relatively large gap over here. The gap over here also doesn't look particularly nice, so kind of keep that in mind. I didn't really like seeing that in a vehicle that has, a $60,000 price tag. Now, there is a really nice power tilt and telescoping steering wheel. I love the way the new steering wheel looks with its kind of big 3-spoke design. It says Denali here to remind you, again, you have the top trim. There are paddles to control the 8-speed auto. Your Super Cruise buttons are here. There's the Super Cruise status bar here, which glows green when it's active, blue, and red, of course. That camera there watches your face to make sure you're paying attention. You have some of the latest versions of GM's wiper controls. You have your driver assist I'm sorry, your drive mode selector here, where you can cycle between a normal, a sport, an off-road mode, a snow, ice, a tow haul mode. Most of you will drive the vehicle in normal. There's also a button here to engage the all-wheel drive system, which the vehicle will default to whatever mode you left it in, but if you want, you can put it into a two-wheel drive setting, which is front-wheel drive. Most of you will probably just leave it in the all-wheel drive function. Start, stop, defeat button is there, no mild hybrid, so you definitely notice that it's a little jarry when it first activates the start stop feature. There's also a heads up display that's included as standard on the Denali. It's optional on other trims. And then you can see here the horn. It sounds pretty decently sized, or decently toned given the size of the vehicle. And then this right here is your transmission selector. It's pretty similar to what Mercedes uses. However, you do have to kind of pull it towards you first. So kick that way to go into reverse. Up, you can see there's your top down full 360 camera. The graphics and the resolution, I would probably say they are average to slightly above average. There's also a tow view over there, so that's pretty nice. It's standard, of course, when you go for the Denali trim. Kick it all the way down, pull toward you and go down to go to drive. Push the end of the button there to go into park. Some of you may have to get used to the fact that the wiper controls are now on the left side as opposed to on the right side. Over here, of course, in the center stack, the big 15-inch touchscreen certainly looks great. There are a couple of buttons that have been buried into the screen. So like other newer GM products, the headlight controls are no longer here. They're located in the screen. You can just tap that. You can see there's quick access to it. You can also tap that to get, even more access to it, where you can go into the lights here. You can turn on the front fog lights. You can put it into an automatic setting. You can adjust the dome lights there. There's with the CarPlay pulled up. I like the portrait style to it. You can see it's a little bit sluggish at times there. This also does have Google built in along with Google Maps. You can see there's the Google Map interface, which is nice. This is a big upgrade from the 8-inch display that it maxed out with in the 2023 model. So that's, again, a big improvement. Going to the home display, these are where you can access all your usual apps and widgets. You can see there's your ambient lighting. You can change it with multiple colors and adjust the brightness. So it's, kind of cool to see that feature added. You can also access the Amazon Alexa, which is built in, and the Google Assistants. I'm sorry, scratch the Amazon Alexa. Actually, no, there it is right there. I got super confused with another brand. There's also Waze and Spotify built in. You can download more things from the Google Play Store, obviously, which is a nice touch. Going into your vehicle status, this is where you can reset the trip computer function. You have to go there into trip, and then hit there, and then hit reset 1 or 2. That's how you do it from here. You can't do it from some of the controls over here in this display here. This is slightly customizable, however. You can essentially push this little button here. You can put the map display over here, the Google map. You can also put the Apple CarPlay maps there, only Apple CarPlay, not Waze, and then you can go into like a driver assist feature. Most of you may just have it in the actual information display, which is how I kind of drove the vehicle around. And so this infotainment touchscreen is a huge improvement. There is a little bit of a learning curve, but I love the fact that it's really quick and easy to use. The touchscreen is mostly responsive. The software is good, although there are times where I noticed it was a little sluggish. And then, of course, going to your audio systems there, you can see there's where you can add all of your favorites. There's your music information. So I have no complaints with this, even though this is the smallest screen in its class, or it's among the triplets. It's still a really nice size screen, and it's bigger versus most of the rivals, which top out at around 12.3 inches. Love the fact that there are traditional air vents. You have these big toggles here to adjust the tri-zone climate control. Big center console area here, which this wood trim looks and feels really nice. You can see big wireless phone charging pad, 2 USB charging ports, an A and a C. More storage underneath here, big cup holders, nice padded center console. Open that up, you can see it's pretty deep sized storage area where you can put, you can hide a few items over there. The seats themselves, I find them to be relatively comfortable, although while the padding is nice, I couldn't get comfortable in the seat itself when I was driving this vehicle, especially on longer trips. It's also missing a massage function, which would have been nice, especially at this price point. The glove compartment, you can see, is damped but not lined with felt. It's a big glove box, so there's some more good storage over there. The 16-speaker Bose audio system also sounds decent. It's not the best in the class. I found that it was lacking a little bit in bass when I had it turned up, and I even turned up the bass in the subwoofer. But overall, as you can see, the interior has decent visibility, good materials, but fit and finish could be a little bit better. Seats are relatively comfortable, amazing technology, and it certainly has an impressive look and luxury car feel to it. But overall, as you can see, it's just a big improvement versus the previous generation. You also have a digital camera rear mirror. I forgot to mention also the big panoramic sunroof. That's standard on the Reserve package trim. It's part of that package. Lets in a ton of light. It also opens up to vent air. But overall, I think most should be relatively happy with this new interior, especially on this Denali trim. Now moving into the second row of this vehicle, or the back seat, let's go ahead and take a look at that. Now if you guys are looking for a bench seat in the new Acadia, you're gonna have to go down to a Traverse because GMC does not offer a 3-person bench in the second row. All the trims come with captain's chairs, and I will say that the captain's chairs look really nice. I love the, the two-tone sheer gray and very dark atmosphere interior with the real leather. These seats are also heated, but sadly not ventilated. They should be ventilated, especially at this price point. And then you can see the door panel material has the same soft touch injection molded plastic with the wood trim, leather over here. Still, I'm noticing a couple of fitment issues when I, take a look at that. There's a pretty large gap over there. And I'm also noticing there's no retractable sunshades, manual or power. It should be included, especially at this price point. Down here it is hard touch plastic, which is kind of to be expected. But overall, once you get into the second row, you can see the space back here is plentiful. In fact, GMC says you have around 41.5 inches of second row legroom, which is around 2 inches more than the previous generation. There's also a completely flat floor here. You have your own tri-zone climate control with your 3-level heated seats. Again, cooled seats should be included at this price point, especially considering this is a Denali trim. You have 2 storage pockets in each of the front seat backs, which is nice. There's also 2 USB-C charging ports, an actual 12-volt power outlet here, a little bit more storage underneath here, but no slide-out tray like what you might find in some competitors. These seats also give you the ability to slide forward and back. You're going to have to slide them forward. This is the max amount slid forward here to give you more third row space, which I'll show you in just a moment. Most of you will probably have it in the all the way back setting. This is with it 1 click forward. I'll show you guys the space. As you can see, there's also an armrest that folds down, gives you 2 cup holders along with a big pass-through here. No actual fixed console. That's available in some competitors as well. And then you can see you have rear seat air vents located on the ceiling. The big sunroof comes into the second row, which is nice. In terms of the headroom space, you can see at 5'7", I have a pretty good amount of headroom space. I have a ton of leg room where I can also cross my legs. So the second row is a nice place to spend time. It just needs sunshades and ventilated seats for it to be, I think, a really good option in this space. Now, getting into the third row, you can access the third row by basically pushing this button here. You can see the seat will slide forward or catapult forward, and then you can slide it out of the way. It also slides in a manner where you could keep a child seat latched, anchored there to still get access into the third row, which is definitely a nice touch. You can see the third row sits 3 people across. It has the same beautiful leather material back here with the 2-tone look. They didn't skimp back here, which is nice. And then you can see, getting back here, I'll go ahead and I'll push this seat back. This is not with the seat all the way back. GMC says there's around 32 inches of legroom back here, which with the seats not all the way back, you can see it's actually pretty far forward. There's a really good amount of space. The floor is nice and low, but I'll go ahead and move this seat back here, which, as you can see, it's kind of a pain in the butt to do it when I'm trying to film, but move it all the way back. You can see that's with it all the way back. And then when this is all the way back, you can see the space is really compromised. I can barely put my foot between the leg, or get my foot between this little area there, but you can see my knees are jammed up against the actual seats. So this is completely unacceptable for a vehicle that's this big with the second row all the way back. In a Kia Telluride or Hyundai Palisade, you can have the seat all the way back and you still have enough leg room in the third row for somebody that's my height. Same thing with the Toyota Grand Highlander. There are a couple of features here like USB-C charging ports, hard touch plastic here, but there's cup holders, a small-ish window back here. You do have third row air vents. If I move over here to this side, this is with the second row seat 1 click up. This is a more acceptable position. This is pretty similar to like a Hyundai Palisade where my knees are just barely touching it. You can see same material quality here with the USB-C touch points, or the USB-C charging port. You have a rear seat air vent. The vehicle is wide enough to where you could put 3 people across, and then in terms of the headroom, there's a sculpted area here, so there is actually a ton of headroom space, even for taller drivers, I believe. But overall, the third row, considering the size, when the seat is all the way back here in the second row, this is unacceptable. This is acceptable, but again, in some competitors, you can have the second row all the way back and still have enough space to actually fit an average size adult in the third row. So here we are, finally behind the wheel of the fully redesigned third generation GMC Acadia. This one isn't just any old Acadia, it's the Denali trim, which is the top of the line version. As you guys know, Denali is like a luxury sub-brand within GMC that accounts for a pretty big chunk of sales. So it's really great to finally be behind the wheel of this new generation. This SUV has long been the choice for those of you who basically love the Yukon, but you don't necessarily need the added bulk that the Yukon gives you. This is, of course, a car-based SUV. It's built off the same architecture that also underpins the new Chevrolet Traverse and the upcoming Buick Enclave. Now, this version that we're driving is basically the best equipped model. It comes with one engine option, regardless of the trim, a new 2.5-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, delivering 328 horsepower and 326 pound-feet of torque. That's 18 more horsepower and about 55 more pound-feet of torque versus the old V6, and about 100 more horsepower versus the old 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder, which was the base engine in the previous generation. It all goes out through an 8-speed automatic. My test car has all-wheel drive. The last time I 0 to 60 tested this car's platform mate, the Traverse, I got 7.45 seconds. So let's see what we can get in the GMC version. I have the all-wheel drive system locked. I have it in its sport setting here. Let's go ahead and brake torque it. 7.7 seconds there. So a little bit slower than the Traverse that I tested about a month and a half ago. And I would probably attribute it to maybe the increase in the weight for this model. I couldn't find the exact curb weight of this car, but I'd say it's just a smidge under 5,000 pounds. That 0 to 60 time, you know, is acceptable, but it's also a little bit sluggish for the segment. You know, if you look at something like the Toyota Grand Highlander with its 2.4 turbo engine, it'll probably do it in the low 7-second range, maybe 7.2. A Subaru Ascent with a 2.4-liter turbo should do it in the, you know, under 7-second range. Some of the V6 options will do it in like 6.5 seconds. You don't buy a vehicle like this for 0 to 60 times, but I will say that there is a noticeable amount of turbo lag on this powertrain. Let me try it again here. The engine really wakes up above 3,000 RPM. The 8-speed is smooth and it shifts well, 7.86 seconds there. Now that's with it going more slightly uphill. I have a suspicion that brake torquing actually makes it worse, so I'll try it one more time up ahead there on our last stretch and see if I can get a slightly better time. The one thing I don't like about this powertrain, however, is the refinement. The engine, while it is relatively smooth, it makes these rather coarse and strained sounds. It sounds like the engine is struggling to move this vehicle, which, you know, for 328 horsepower, it has a ton of power. It shouldn't feel so strained. And mid-range torque is good. Scratch that. Let me actually say it doesn't feel strained. It sounds strained. And I think that's kind of a misstep for GMC to kind of, you know, tune the engine sound of this vehicle a little bit better. I mean, I've driven plenty of competitors with 4-cylinder turbos and they don't sound as like coarse as this powertrain does. It's just constantly reminding me that it's a 4-cylinder. And I don't like that. If you guys had the old V6, the V6, even though it was down on horsepower and torque, had a much better sound. Thankfully, this 8-speed is a good partner for the engine. It puts the engine in the meat of the meat of its power brain. It shifts quickly enough. It's, you know, smooth when it shifts. It just reminds you again that you have only 4 cylinders underneath the hood. Now, this vehicle got substantially bigger this year because of the increase in wheelbase and the overall length. And you definitely feel the size of the Acadia. This is among the wider vehicles in the segment, among the longer vehicles in the segment. It feels a little bit more like I'm driving around in a big minivan at times, which is not something that I could say about the Traverse, because the Traverse had, you know, the Z71 off-road package. Now, obviously, GMC offers their equivalent in the form of the AT4 trim level. Haven't had a chance to drive that yet, but put my foot down here. You can see mid-range power is good once you get past the sound, and it really is a smooth shifting transmission. So once you get the vehicle going, it feels fine. It's just initially you have to get past the turbo lag that you feel from this engine, and then you have to get past the coarse sound, but it does move the vehicle out relatively smartly once it does. Just keep in mind, if you want a hybrid option, you want even more power, Chevy, GMC doesn't offer, or Buick doesn't offer, you know, an upgraded engine like you can find in like a Toyota Grand Highlander or like a Mazda CX-90. But let's go ahead and put our foot down here. Feels so much better actually when you don't brake torque it. All right, 7.19 seconds there. So that's actually much better. don't brake torque it, which is something that didn't affect the Traverse, I feel like, when I first tested that a month and a half ago. So that time is much improved, 7.2. We'll take that as the best 0 to 60 time. Again, you don't buy this vehicle for 0 to 60 times, but it feels sufficiently okay. Although I would question if you plan to tow, utilize that 5,000 pound towing capacity, if it's able to actually move this vehicle around with enough gusto, or if you have it loaded up with a bunch of people and stuff. So let's go ahead and switch the drive mode here into normal. My test car being a Denali, it does come with the performance adaptive suspension. So it does have the ability to adjust the dampers to give you a softer ride quality. In normal, you really notice that this is a refined vehicle. The steering is light, numb. It's relatively quick and it's responsive, but it doesn't actually translate much into road feel. This is not a sporty driving vehicle, but it is a competent driving vehicle. The seats, I will say that these are the upgraded actual leather bucket seats that you get in the Denali trim. The padding feels okay. I just couldn't really find a really comfortable driving position in these seats. I love the way they look. The heat and ventilation function works well. No massaging though. I would have expected to see massaging in a Denali trim version, especially at this price category. You can see out of the visibility out of the front and the side is good, although the A-pillar here is a little bit thick. The view out of the back is also good, although going with the Super Cruise package throws in that digital camera review mirror, which is a really great feature in a family SUV like this. Speaking of Super Cruise, it's the first time we can get Super Cruise on an Acadia in general, and this Super Cruise function works really well. I had a chance to test it out for a good hour-long loop on the highway, and it is able to change lanes for you. It's able to keep you centered in the lane. It'll initiate lane changes automatically, which is really impressive to see, and it works really well. It's still among the best in the industry, and I love the fact that GMC offers Super Cruise on all trims of the Acadia. I think that's going to be great for people who do lots of road trips. The infotainment system, you can see, even though this is the smallest screen among the triplets, the Enclave and the Traverse, it looks great. I love the wireless CarPlay functionality. It's quick and snappy. It's responsive. It has Google built in. It has GPS, Google built in as well. Which is great. And then in terms of build quality, I noticed that there were no squeaks and rattles in this interior, despite the fact that you do have some panel fitment gaps, which I noticed in the interior scene. My test car is not a pre-production model, so not really thrilled about seeing that. In terms of fuel efficiency, in my week's worth of testing, I was averaging just under 20 mpg, around 19.8 in about the last 150-ish miles of driving. On the highway, I was able to get around 25 mpg, so a little bit better than the EPA's number. On the highway, you have just under a 22-gallon fuel tank, so you're looking at around just under 400 miles of range on a full tank. That's thankfully on regular gas. Again, if you want even more efficiency, Toyota will happily sell you a Grand Highlander hybrid, which is one of the few vehicles that offer two different hybrid powertrains. But this fuel economy is competitive, and you can see why GMC decided to go with a 4-cylinder. This is really a great road trip vehicle. It's a great family vehicle, especially now that you have the increase in the overall length, giving you way more cargo capacity. There's just a couple of things around this vehicle, a few areas where it's rough around the edges, especially in the powertrain, refinement, the sounds that this engine makes that I don't particularly love. And it also comes down to the pricing, because this vehicle is definitely among the more expensive offerings out there. But if you guys are a big fan of the styling, you need the extra space and capability, you love the technology, this vehicle is definitely worth a look. And I personally would choose it likely over the Traverse, although Chevy just introduced a Traverse High Country, which is a new top-of-the-line version, which they finally brought back for 2025. Once I see one of those and test drive that, I'll be able to see if I still prefer this. And then next week, I'll also be driving the new Buick Enclave, which again is technically the most luxurious version of the triplet 3-row family SUVs. So with just over 66,000 units sold in America in 2023, the Acadia is obviously not the best-selling vehicle in this segment, but it does represent a pretty big chunk of the sales pie, especially when you look at this car's platform age. So the Chevrolet Traverse is the bestseller, doing around 124,000 units. The Buick Enclave typically does around 40,000 units. So this accounts for about 30% of the triplet sales volume mix. So obviously, the Acadia has an important role within GMC and GM in general. And after spending a week with the all-new third-generation model, there are a lot of big positives here. GMC has significantly improved the exterior styling and the space and the practicality of this vehicle. The technology is also significantly improved. Even though this technically has the smallest touchscreen among the Chevrolet and the Buick, I also think this is still a really attractive-looking interior. The interior materials also have definitely gotten nicer versus the previous generation. although the fit and finish of this particular one that I have here isn't what I would say class leading, especially considering the price tag. The back seat is spacious. The third row actually isn't as spacious as the Grand Highlander, which kind of surprised me considering this is now among the biggest vehicles in the segment, but you do get the biggest cargo capacity. And the other downside of the Acadia is the fact that if you're looking for a hybrid option, there is nothing available. This Turbo 4 offers, you know, decent power, 0 to 60 in 7.2 seconds, but it has a coarseness that doesn't befit a vehicle with the kind of price tag and luxury aspirations that the Acadia Denali is supposed to portray. Now, in terms of availability, this vehicle is already at your local GMC dealerships, and pricing for the new version obviously has gotten significantly more expensive. Base pricing for an Elevation trim, which replaces the SLE and the SLT trim, starts at $42,600 plus $2,000 if you guys want all-wheel drive. That's about a $5,800 increase versus the 2023 model. Now, granted, there is a lot more standard equipment, more technology, more power, and a lot more space because it's so much larger, but I still think a $6,000 price increase is a steep proposition. Keep in mind, if you guys want basically this platform, a Traverse starts at around $5,000 less at around $37,600. So kind of keep that in mind. The AT4 trim is going to cost you around $50,000. That includes, of course, the standard twin clutch all-wheel drive system. A Denali is going to start at around $54,000 plus $2,000 for all-wheel drive. You're looking at around at least $56,000. My test car has a lot of options on it, including the Denali Reserve package for $3,000, the Super Cruise package for another $3,500, plus the exterior color upcharge and destination. You're looking at a grand total here of $64,810. So almost $65,000 for this vehicle is pretty darn expensive. It's going to be, you know, more expensive than its rivals at the top end by about $8,000 to $10,000. Although some of you may argue that the Denali trim, the Denali name, is kind of worth the extra charge because there are some premium elements of this vehicle. The Super Cruise technology is among the best hands-free driver assistance you're going to find in the segment. It also has among the most space and cargo capacity in the segment. But I think, you know, for this price tag, this vehicle is missing a hybrid powertrain option, which would be nice. GM is working on reintroducing hybrids again, and the lack of massaging seats and the rear window sunshades really, for me, kind of are some negatives that would be hard to overlook. But if you can overlook some of those negatives, the Acadia, the new version, is certainly bringing this vehicle back to the first generation, and it certainly is still worth a look. Just keep in mind, it is pricier than most of its rivals, and as long as you're okay with that, you should find plenty to like with this new third generation Acadia. But with all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2024 GMC Acadia. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.